This conference will now be recorded.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you to Decode SF Certification Platform Developer 1 certification series. Uh, Today, we are going to cover our session 2, which is about process automation and logic part 1. In this session, we are going to cover about the Salesforce automation tools available, which would be covering Apex, that how you can use Apex for your automation, which is Salesforce programming language. We'll talk about a little bit about approval process, workflows, flows, a process builder, assignment rules. So all these topics we will be going in detail and talking about today. Uh, so as part of this session, we have our speaker today, Arpit Vijay. Arpit is a Salesforce Lightning champion. He is participating in the Lightning program. He is very experienced Salesforce developer. He has done the Salesforce Platform Developer 1 certification already. Uh, Other than this, he is also having 5 other certifications and 7 super batches. So it means he has spent a lot of time in the trial head environment to learn a lot of things. Arpit is speaking first time on Decode SF platform, but he has been contributing to the community on a various groups running across the world. Arpit is based on Rajasthan, India, and he is quite active on the social channels. So if you would like to connect with him after the session, you can connect with him on a LinkedIn and Twitter. We have shared both the details here, so you can take a screenshot and keep in touch with him. About this series, we do have other speakers as well. Rohit Pal, he is also a Salesforce application architect. He has been speaking on our Decode SF certification on previous series. Sean Das, who was presenting the first session about the platform developer one. You already have the recordings of that session available on our YouTube channel. Sharan Kumar is based in Germany. He is also our first time speaker on the Decode SF certification. He writes blogs. He is Forex Salesforce certified, and he has also done the platform developer one certification. And at last, we have a Prithvi Raj, who is also 3x certified. He is also speaking first time on a Decode SF certification, but from an industry experience, all our speakers are very experienced working with the Salesforce ecosystem from quite a long time. So moving to the next slide about us. So Decode SF certification is in a group we have started initially with some set of friends. Uh, we were planning to start the certification, and therefore we thought sharing the knowledge is the best way. And therefore we started in a group in a room, and then Bhavna came within a concept that we can make this group public so that everyone can take an advantage of it. At the same time, we can also take an advantage of the people around the world with their experience, their journey, and therefore we have formed this group. So it is an unofficial Salesforce group where we discuss about our knowledge, our experience. So therefore, all of you on the call are allowed to share anything during the session. If you want to share anything related to the topic, you are most welcome to do so. Here are our details. You can follow us on a Decode SF certs on our Twitter. We are quite active on all the social channels. All the upcoming updates you can find us on the Twitter. All our videos or our previous recordings you can find on YouTube under Decode SF certifications. And we generally plan our series on a meetup, so you can register for all upcoming sessions on the meetup. About platform developer one credentials, so it is an exam where the people who want to be a developer generally go for these credentials. It doesn't have any prerequisites. This is designed for the persons who are 1 to 3 years of experience in a Salesforce, who are writing the basic codes. It is also helpful for the people who do not write the code but involved in the design and the architect decision. This will give them an ability to understand how the Salesforce platform work and behave. So it is a very important certification, especially for the people who are starting their career as a developer, or for the people who are working in a non-technical environment but involved in the architectural decision or the solution decision. It gives them an ability to think that what you can do with the automation tool and with the programming capabilities via Force.com platform. So exam is in a 60 multiple choice questions. The questions answers would be on multiple choice. You may get 60 or 65 questions. If you see 65 questions, 5 of the random questions will be unscored. Rest 60 questions will be scored on, and the passing score is in a 65%. It is in a 110 minutes exam, because in the exam you may see some of the scenarios based on a program, and in some time you may see the small code written, and you may need to read, understand, and then answer. So therefore the length of the exam is little bit more than the general admin exams. Though the exam fees is same, $200, and in case if you need to retake the exam, you have to pay 100 USD. So very important exam. Uh, Make sure that you go through all the fundamentals before you attend this exam. And then about this series, how we have divided this series is into 5 important topics. The first one we have already covered, where we were talking about the foundation layer of the Salesforce, which is in a data modeling, how the object relationships, things like that works. Today we'll be talking about process automation. It is in a big topic, so therefore we have divided into two: logic part 1, which would be covered today, and logic part 2, which would be covered by on the next session by Prithvi. And then we'll talk about user interface, where we'll talk about Visualforce page, Lightning Web Component, covered by Rohit. And at last, we'll be talking about all testing tools, debugging, deployment strategies, and things like that, which would be covered by Sharan. So this is how the entire certification series is planned. This time we are also doing it along with Women in Tech Amsterdam group. So all the members from a Women in Tech group are most welcome. And with this note, I will pass it to Arpit to take us through the rest of the presentation. So Arpit, I will pass it to you.
Yeah, sure, Mangan. Thank you.
Let me make you the presenter. Just give me 1 second.
Is my voice is audible to all?
Yes.
Yeah. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on whatever time zone you are joining. So without wasting our time, let's talk about our agenda, like what we are going to cover today. Okay. So today we will be talking about some declarative approaches of the automation tools available in the Salesforce, such as workflow, process builder, flow, and approval process. Some more we will include, like how we can call Apex using in the declarative approach, and then we will talk about some some basic of the Apex, and then some more things into the Apex. So let's start with the okay. So let's talk about what are the automation tools are available in the Salesforce, which has some declarative features, like we have workflow, process builder, flow, and approval process, which are majorly used while you are providing some solutions or you are implementing something into the Salesforce. Let's talk about the workflow. So workflow is one of automation tool which is used to perform some actions based on any criteria. So to define the workflow process, we have 3 steps. So in the first step, we have evaluation criteria. So in the evaluation criteria, we have some things like the criteria would be like whenever the report is created, and another is created and every time it's edited, and another is created and anytime it's edited to subsequently meet the criteria. So what is the difference between these three? So whenever we are having the created, so our workflow only fire when the record is created. And when we have created every time it's edited, so it will fire when we update the record also. We record at any time also. And for the third one, it check like whenever if the record hasn't met the previously with the criteria, then it will fire. So for the rule criteria, like we have evaluation criteria, like the record will the workflow will execute when they created and it's anytime it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. But for every record there will be some internal criteria also for every rule. So when the record will execute, like for example, if our contract is going to expire today, so we can have this criteria. Our contract says it's birthday today, we want to send some, we want to do some action on that. The salary of employee is greater than 15,000 or 20,000. These are some example of rule criteria which we can use. There are some actions we can take using this workflow process. So any action we can take is it is divided into the two scenarios. One is we can fire immediate action, and another is we can schedule it for some time also. So the available actions are field update, email alert, and task creation and outbound message. So if we have requirement where we need to immediately take any of these actions, we will choose the immediate we will choose the immediate type. And if we have some requirement, like whenever the employee like whenever the contact is created and we want to send an email to him after some 7 days, 4 days, 5 days, like that. And if we have some delay, like we want to take some delay on the basis of some time, then we go for the time dependent action. So let's talk about each, like field update, email alert, and task creation and outbound message. So for the field update, we can update only the fields on the record on the
Arpit, sorry to interrupt you. Can you speak little bit louder? And sometime we are also hearing little bit of background noise. So if you can just speak little louder, I think it will help everyone on the call to understand you.
Okay, sure. Just give me one minute. Okay, so when we are talking about the field update, so only the fields on on the record from where our workflow was started can be updated only. And outbound message is used when we want to send some notification to the outer some other system outside the our Salesforce system. Now let's talk about the process builder. So process builder has a graphical representation of the process or actions we are using, and it also support the relationship between the parent to child and child to parent. So if I talk about the field update, we have these action into the process builder also. So when we are updating the field, so in the workflow, it is the limited, it is the difference between the workflow and the process builder. In the workflow, we can update only the field of that particular same record. But in the process builder, we can update the field of related parent objects also, or child also. We can access them. Okay. So similar to the workflow, here also we have evaluation criteria. So the evaluation criteria is slightly different here. One is the record is changed. So whenever the record is created or updated, uh, process builder will execute. Another is platform event. So whenever we want to listen any platform event, then we can use the process builder also. And third one is invoke by another process. So one process builder can invoke another process builder also. So like if we have one process builder which need to invoke another process builder, then for the second process builder, we need to define evaluation criteria as a invoke by another process. The rule criteria is similar here also. And these are the actions we can take here. So compared to workflow, we have more actions here. Another the powerful thing in the process builder is that we have if else condition here. Like we can use multiple we can define multiple rule criteria here and define the actions particularly for that particular rule criteria. Suppose we want to send multiple emails to uh, contact. So whenever the contact is created, we want to send some email, and if its salary is greater than 15,000, we want to take some another action. And if its city is like on depend on its city, we want to do some another action. So if we do this thing in the workflow, we need to build different like different workflows. But using the process builder, we can do it in the single process builder, like taking the if else decision there. And we have more actions available here. Like in the workflow, we only can create the task record only, but in the process builder, we can related records also, like child and parent records also we can create. And we can call flows also here. We can invoke another process also. Even we can submit for approval also, and we can call apex also in the process builder. Okay, let's talk about some questions. So we have some scenarios, and we will decide like which tool we can use workflow or the process builder. So what should a developer use to post a message on Chatter when a picklist field called status on a custom object application is set to approved? Anyone want to answer it?
It's a process builder. Use process builder to post to Chatter based on the meeting the required criteria.
Correct. So like in the workflow, we don't have any option to post on the Chatter, but in the process builder, we have option to post on the Chatter. So next one, a company that uses a custom object to track candidates would like to send candidate information automatically to a third-party human resource system when a candidate is hired. What can a developer do to accomplish this task? So A is create an escalation rule to hiring manager. So the hiring manager can perform this action. Create an auto response rule to the candidate. Create a process builder with an outbound message action, and a workflow rule with an outbound message action. Anyone would like to answer it?
Yeah, we can create a workflow rule with an outbound message.
Correct.
It's D.
So like in the so like yeah, correct. So there is no use of creating escalation rule and the hiring manager will do it manually. Like if we are doing we have some out of the box automation tools, then don't let them do this thing. And in the process builder, we don't have outbound message action available. In the workflow only we have. So this is the major difference between. This is the only thing which we can do with the workflow, but we cannot do it with the process builder only using the declarative tool. We have to write some apex and then we can call that apex into the process builder. So here is another question. What would a developer do to update a picklist field on a related opportunity record when modification to the associate account record is detected? So like whenever any changes occurred on the account, we want to update its opportunities. So what we can do? Can we?
We can create a workflow rule with a field update. It's B, and
It should be a process
field
builder.
update and the process with process builder also.
Yeah, so the right answer will be we can create a process builder. So in the workflow, we can update only the fields on the same record. We cannot traverse the child records in workflow. So the correct answer will be the process builder. So anything you any other question you want to ask before I move forward to another slide or another topic in the
Yeah, I
workflow?
have one question. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the process builder, you mentioned about some events can also trigger a process builder, right? Platform events.
Yes.
So what are the platform events we are referring to here?
Yeah, platform event like it's more about the IoT thing. Like whenever any like platform event is a different topic in the Salesforce and different thing which can be achieved. So I cannot cover the platform event in it, but it's a type of event like apart from the DML events, like it is a custom event, so which you can fire, and if you want like another third system also it can fire, and you can listen it in the uh, process builder, and you can take actions there.
Okay, just for example, any event that you can name.
So Arpit, is that okay if I try to answer that?
Yeah, man.
Okay, so platform events are the Salesforce messages. So for example, let's say um, you want to send a broadcast message, right? So let's say your Salesforce is integrated with 5 different systems. So platform event can be used for internal and external. I'm giving an example for external. So let's say you have 5 different systems connected within a Salesforce. Let's say ERP, SAP, and maybe a billing system, a BI system. So, and your intention is to just send in a message, and based on a message, if the third party want to take an action, for example, let's say your record is updated in a Salesforce. Now you want to communicate it to 5 different parties that an update has happened in a Salesforce. So we don't know whether you want to take that update or not, but we just want to broadcast it that there is an update has happened. So in such scenarios, we can use the Salesforce platform event and we can announce it. And then all our respective parties can receive this announcement and act accordingly. So that is how the platform event works. And these are the actions which occurs, and based on an actions, we can take a further action. So what Arpit has explained here is if we can create a platform action, and based on that action, we can fire in a process builder. Hope that that help you understanding the platform events.
Yeah, Manu, thank you. But I'm not very close to or aware of what are the different platform events. Like for example, in case of DML, we have create, update, delete, right? So are there any generic categories for the platform events? So this is
Yeah.
a platform event. Yeah.
So what we will do is I will publish some YouTube or a document link on our WhatsApp channel for your reference. Yeah,
Okay,
you
thank
can
you.
go through
Yeah,
those.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just have one question as well, which is I think it's quite important, is that within Salesforce you have the workflow and you have the process builder and you also have Apex at the same time. I think it's important just to think that that when a record, for example, is eventually saved, that there is an order where the process builder and workflow, for example, that they fall before some of the Apex and that can be something which is important. So you may create a process builder, but actually if there are specific type of triggers in Apex that are in there, it may be that that can cause issues at a later stage. I just think it's important that process builder, as it's showing in Trailhead, looks fantastic, but if there is at the back end at Apex that needs to be looked at separately.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for this, like for the order of execution thing, like in the next in our next session, Prithvi is taking care of this.
Yeah.
He will be
So,
explaining some concept
Super.
and some models there.
yeah. So Fergal, I can relate to you. We had a similar issue in our project where we were hitting the too many SQL queries, and the reason was there were a lot of process builder workflows, triggers were firing, and they were bouncing each other, and then we had this issue. So
Correct.
you are right, for a developer or in a designer perspective, you should definitely know in which order these things execute, and once a record execute, which one gets repeated. So as Arpit said, we are going to cover this as part of our next presentation in the next session, that how the order of executions go. So we'll decode it in the next session.
Super, thank you.
Okay. So for the next, we have flows. So flows are likely, the visual flows are likely to be like, there are two type of flows. One is screen flow and one is auto launch flow. So a screen flow is more likely like a visual force space, where you can take input from the users and you can perform some actions, like you can create records, update records, and you can delete records as well as also in the flows. And in the auto launch flow, like it is the backend process, and you can perform some complex scenarios there, and you can invoke it from the process builder itself also. So like these are the things available in the flows, like you can create records and update records, and we can also query the records, and we can perform the delete action also. So like in the process builder, we cannot delete any record. We can update the records or we can create the records, but in the flow we can delete the records also. And in the process builder, we cannot query the records on some specific criteria, but in the flow we can write our own query using the get reports, and we can loop over it, and we can perform any action, and we can do that. So the auto launch screen flow will always be launched using any button on the record, like on the quick action. Using quick action we can launch a flow. And how the auto launch flow will be executed. So in the, we have seen in the process builder, we can launch a flow there from there. So in the process builder we can execute only auto launch flow. From there we cannot launch the screen flow. Next thing is approval process.
If we can take a step back, Arpit, can we ask our audience, do you know why we cannot launch the screen flow from process builder? Anyone try to answer that?
Process builder itself is a backend process.
Yes, so it is in a backend process, and your screen may need your user input, and therefore it may not be able to get that input from a backend. Yep, thank you.
So next we have approval process. So when we need to use the approval process. So whenever any decision making is being included in any our automation task, we can use approval process. So like whenever any user needs to approve or reject any record, and then we use approval process. So here also we have some steps, like we need to define some entry criteria, like whenever, like in which situation the record will be treated to be approved by user. Then we can have some actions on, like whenever the record is initially submitted for the approval, we can take some we can perform some actions. So these actions are the same actions which are available for workflow, like we can update a field, we can send an email alert, we can create task for any user, and we can these actions are available there. And for the approval steps, like we can have single approval steps, like only the first user, if first user approve, then the only user who is taking the decision, like he will the only person who will approve, or only the person who will reject. And we can have the multiple approval steps also, so like multiple users are involved. So for that we can create multiple approval steps. And also on the basis of user's action, like approval or final, we can perform the same actions which we perform on the initial actions. So let's take an example, like we have an object expense, and whenever the expense is created, we have some amount there, like 10,000. So whenever the expense is submitted, like if the amount is greater than 10,000, then the manager or the senior person needs to approve the that expense. So in that case, we can define a work approval process where the entry criteria will be the amount is greater than 10,000, and whenever the report is submitted, we can have update its any field, or we can log the report also. And when the user when the approval user approve the record, then we can send an email to the record owner like congrats, your expense has been approved. And if it has been rejected, then we can send another email using, we can take another action using the rejection action. How this process will be initiated? So like if we want some manual manually, if someone wants to submit it for the approval, then we have a button, a special button for the approval process. We need to edit on the page layout. Name its name is submit for approval, and from by clicking that the record will be submitted for the approval process. And using the process builder, like if you want to do it the automated process, then using the process builder it can be done. So in the process builder we can submit the record for approval process also.
I think it's important to think of your auditing in this, because I've seen it worked in the medical field. So the need to have a button for auditing purposes was an important consideration there.
Yeah, so if some user interaction is needed, then we can use the submit for approval button. And if you want to do it automated, then from the process builder we can do it. Any questions on the approval process?
No question from my side, but I just want to highlight from an exam perspective, this is a very important topic. So what I would suggest you, if you do not have hands-on experience understanding the approval process, please create a multiple approval process in your developer sandbox or your developer learning environment, and see how the approval process works. I'm sure at least 2 to 3 or 4, even 4 questions you may see from an approval process, that what will happen if two workflows having the same entry criteria, exit criteria, anonymous approvals. So just want to highlight that please make sure that you spend good time understanding the overall concept of an approval process from an exam perspective.
So can I proceed next slide?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Yeah.
I had just one question, if that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So auto submission of record can only be achieved through process builder in case of approval process, or we can use other tools?
Yeah. So in the declarative, it can only be done using the process builder only. Using
Okay.
Apex also you can do.
So in triggers as well, you can do it where if your condition is met, so you can call it by either Apex, as Arpit said, or by a process builder.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So these are some 2 other automation tools are also available: assignment tool and auto response rule. And these are only for the lead and case object in the Salesforce. So whenever a lead and case is being submitted to the system, and if you want to assign it to any user or any queue on the base of some criteria, then we can use the assignment rules. And same goes with the auto response rule. Whenever a lead or case is submitted to system, and if you want to send an email to the submitter, then we can use auto response rule on the basis of the criteria. So like what is the the same thing we can do with the workflow or process builder also. Then why we have these two differently? So what I have noticed using the auto response rule, so whenever an email is being sent using the auto response rule, it is always been stored in as an activity also, that for particular record. But when I send an email using the workflow, it doesn't store as an activity on that record. And also like in the auto response rule, The email will be sent immediately. We cannot give a pause here, like whenever the lead or case is submitted and we want to send an email them after 1 day or 4 days or 4 hours or 3 hours. These things, this is not possible in the auto response rule. These were the two differences which I noticed in the auto response rule and workflow rules. So we talked about like we can call process builder, we can call Apex into the process builder. So for that we have a special annotation here. On our method we need to give a special annotation, invocable method. And there are some key points like whenever we are giving this annotation to a method, our method should be public or global, and it must be defined as an static also. And in the class we are defining the method, it must be the outer class, and only one invocable method can be defined in a class, and no another annotation like caseable true or any another annotation is not allowed. And if you are making our method as a parameterized method, then only one parameter can be passed in that method, and with the following data types, like list of primitive data types we can pass, or list of primitive data types we can pass, like list of integer values or list of integer values we can pass. Same goes with list of s object we can pass, or list of s object we can pass here. The generic, like we cannot create our method as a generic, like we can pass object as, and it is not supported in the invocable method. And so like whenever we want to call Apex from the process builder, we need to use this annotation in, on the top of our method. And let's talk about the flow and Apex. So like we can create auto launch flow, and that auto launch flow can be called using the process builder also. But same also, like we can call it from the Apex also. Somewhere we need to reuse our flow, which the auto launch flow which was already created, and we want to use somewhere it in our code, then we can also do it. So for this we have a flow.interview class, and we have its a method.start. So using this method we can call a flow in the Apex also. So this is the main thing, like which tool to use when, like we have a workflow also, process builder also, and flow also. So when we need to use which tool. So like I have this link also. I will share it with the Manmohan, so he will send it to all of you also after the session. But let's talk about this. So we have a workflow also, process builder and flow also. So like whenever you want to take some inputs from user, then if we are talking about the declarative tool, we will always go for the flow. Like in the workflow and process builder, we cannot take any input from the user. And if you talk about the workflow and process builder, so whatever the actions we can take in the workflow are available in the process builder also, except the outbound message. And the difference is like we cannot use multiple criteria and multiple actions in the single workflow. So if you want to use multiple rule criteria and multiple actions, then always go for the process builder. And this is the best practice also, like on the same object, do not create workflow and the process builder, otherwise you will not be able to trace like which one is executing first. So this, like the regarding the order of execution, we will learn it in the next session. And apart from this, like what we have been watching in the Salesforce ecosystem, Salesforce is not giving much update to workflow nowadays. He's just uh, all the new updates are coming on the process builder also. So this is much recommended. Like if you can do using the process builder, use the process builder always, and you can we can have the versioning on also on the process builder. Any questions so far? What we have learned till now, or I will proceed to the next. The next will cover some basic of Apex. Okay, so let's talk about Apex. So in this session, we are covering very basic syntax of the Apex, like data types and classes, objects, and these things. So, like in the data types are the token where we store some values or values in the Apex. So, like we have primitive, the data types are very much similar to the Java. Like someone is if you are already familiar with the Java language, then you will find it very much similar to Java. So for the primitive data types, we have integer, so where we can store any number. We have double, so where we can store the decimal type values also. If we want to store some false and true, then we have boolean. And for date also we have date type, and for date and time we have date and time, so where we can store date along with the time also. And now we have time also, like if you want to store time only, then we have time. And id is a special data type, so every record in the Salesforce has its own unique id, so this represent to that id. And as objects also, like any object in the Salesforce, like it is the custom object or standard object, it also a data type. Like we can declare it as a data type, and we can declare a variable and store the values. Enum is something like we have some static values to define, then we can define it as an enum. Some more example are also here. So Apex class. So I will not go on the bookish language in like what are the bookish language for the Apex class, like the class. But like we have class is the main where we write our mainly our code in the Apex, and it has some small methods. So for the methods we have some access modifier. We need to define the return type, and we need to define the name, and if we need to pass some parameters, we can pass the parameters also. So we have these access modifiers are also. So public, so what is the mean by public side? Like another like if we define our method as a public, so this method can be accessed in another class also. But if we define it as a public, as a private, then only we can access this method in the same class. And if it is global, then it means we are allowing our methods and our classes to be accessed by some outer systems also, using the APIs also. And what is the interface? So interface is also similar to the class, but we have different keyword for the interface. And the major difference is that like in the class we define the body also of our methods, but in the interface we don't define the body. It's just like a blueprint, or it's a contract. Like any interface will be implemented by any class, so it's a like it works like a contract. So any class will implement this interface, it needs to, or it has to define the body for each method written in the interface. So when we need to define some standard, then we use the interface. So whenever any class will use that, it will need to define their body, and there can implementation logic they can handle. So like when we need to store multiple values, then we use collections. So like we have three collections here: list, set, and map. So in the list, list can be of the primitive type or as object type also. So all three are used to store the multiple values. The difference is that like in the list, we can store the duplicate records also, and in the set we can have only the unique records also. And for the map, like we have key value pair, so we can define our own key, and we can store its value, and key should be unique. So if we put a duplicate key, then the record will be overwritten here.
So just to highlight a point based on my experience on the exam, in the exam you may have in a program where, as Arpit said, right, map cannot have a duplicate key. Now in the exam what you can see is uh, Salesforce may give you a scenario where they create a map and add two key values to it, right? Now they will ask you what would be the value if we pass this key. So there are two values for same key. Now you need to answer it which one is the right key. So please make sure that if you do not have a lot of experience already how these collections works, please create in a developer org scenario like this, and then try to see like list, right? It is whether it store the duplicate, right? In which order it will store. Set, play with the store set. Similarly, play with map as well. Create some sample. It will help you understanding reading the sample code in the real exam. So we are not going in detail because as we are assuming that you already have 1 to 3 years of development experience before you go and write this certification. But if that is not the case and you are still new to Apex, please make sure that you do all this practice in your developer org.
Yeah, thanks, Salman. So next we have some control flow statements also. So like whenever we are writing the code and we take some decisions there, like if the amount is greater than something, then we need to do something, and if not greater than 10,000, then we need to take some we need to perform some different action or different thing. So using if else we can do it, and we have if else if also. So like if amount, we have multiple conditions also, like amount is greater than 10,000, then we can do this, and if amount is something else, then we can do this, and if both the conditions are not true, then the else will be executed. Same like we have switch also. So in the switch we can have a switch expression also. So in the switch we will have our expression like switch on weekday. So weekdays are filled, and on the basis of the weekday what we want to do, like when it's Monday we need to do something, we need to do some different action, and when it's Monday we need to do something different, and at least we will be having where else. So it will be default. So any of is not matching, then we will go for this. So these are just to play with the requirements. Like whenever we have to deal with different things in a flow, in a Apex flow, then we need to control using these flow statements. We have loops. Loops are also very important in the Apex. So we have various type of loops. Like we have do while. So in this, like at least once our code will be executed, and we have while. So while it will be executed on the when the condition is true, but in the do while, the first time it will execute even the condition is true. It will not check the condition, and when the condition is matches a false, it will execute the flow. So I have a common example here. So like what I have like what we need to do, we have a third party API from where we need to get response, and we have lots of records there. So we cannot fetch all the records once. So what we can do, like they have some pagination, so we can define, like if you are using while, we will take like boolean has records as a true. So we are saying like, yeah, we are assuming like the records are there, and we will make an API call. We will find the response, and if in the response we are getting like in the response it return the like it has more records or not. So if it has more records, we will assign here. So if it doesn't have more record, we will set it false. So next time it will not call. So here what we have done, like we assumed like the API call has some records. So, and if you want to do the same thing without assuming, So what we can do on the first in the do while, we will perform the API call, we will the get response, and then we will change the Boolean variable. So whatever the condition we have, we will change it according to the response. So things can be achieved using the both of things. These are the some for loops are available in the Apex. So this is the traditional for loop which is available in the almost every programming language. So on the basis of initialize value, and on the condition, like we have initialized value as integer value as a 0, and we have as a less than equal to 10, and we are incrementing it, and we can have the vice versa also, like we can start it from the 10 and it's greater than equal to 0, and we can do minus minus also, and we can perform our action here. So this loop will execute for 9 times, and for each loop also. So like if we are having a collection of collection, and we want to perform, we want to traverse its every record, every element of the collection, then also we can do using the for each loop. Suppose we have a list of the contact, and in that contact in the list we have 10 records. So in that case, we will be accessing the each records one by one. Also, we can use SOQL in the for loop. So like whenever the SOQL is we make, we can handle its response in a for loop also. We will learn about SOQL also in the next few slides.
Is the SOQL in the for loops, is it comes it with the usual SOQL limits, like?
No. So it's not inside the for loop. We are just we are handling its response in the loop. We are not making any SOQL inside the loop. So when we make inside the loop, then it comes the governor limits come in the picture.
Okay, it's just like a list in that case then.
Yeah, it's just like list. I can do like, I can initialize a list and then put the response there, and then perform this loop.
Okay, thank you.
So these were the basic elements of Apex. Like we have covered the data types also, and flow, control flow statement, and loops also. The other key elements of Apex are these three, and these are very important. So the first we have SOQL. Salesforce, it is known as a Salesforce object query language, and it returns one of the following things, like it return the list of S object, and it can return the single S object also, and it can return the integer value also. So let's see in the what is the syntax of SOQL. So like we have the keyword select, so select, and then we can define the field names. It can we can have multiple field names separated by the comma. Then we use this word from, and it tell us like from which object we need to define, and then we can have we can use where, and we can use give some conditions also. So like for the example, like how we can returning the data in the list of S object. So I have defined a list of contacts, and we have select ID and last name from contact. So what are all the contacts are being fetched here? And if you want to store it in the S object, so select ID, last name from contact, and limit 1. So we can do this. And if you want to store it in the integer, so only for the count we can do. And here is the example of very close also. Like I want to count only the contacts which are created today, so I can give this very close. And if I want to fetch the list of the contacts which are created today, I can use this very close there also. Okay, so one thing which I want to highlight, like whenever we are making queries, always try to use some very close, or else use some limit there. And for this statement, I would highlight, if in your system you don't have any contact record, which usually doesn't happen, but suppose like we created a fresh custom object, and we write down this query for the custom object. and we have defined the limit, and we are storing it in the custom object variable. And if it doesn't have any record, then this query will give you an error. It will not execute, like it will give like the list is no row to assign to S object. This type of exception you will get. So like when we need to use the SOQL. So when our targeted object is fixed, like we know like we want to fetch the records from the account or contact or opportunities or lead, then this is one of the thing. And another thing is like we want to count the number of the records on the specific criteria, we can use this. Also, like we can, if you want to sort the results on the in the part of query, then we can use the SOQL. The next, like there are some more type of SOQL are available. Like in the SOQL, we have seen the example like we were fetching the records from the directly one object, but we can fetch the records from the related records also. So like if you are making query on the parent, for our case we have example of account, and we are fetching the results from the account, then we can fetch the results from the child also. For example, we are fetching the account, but we want to fetch all related contacts also. So for this we can use parent to child also. And suppose we are making query on the child, but we want to access some of the fields of the parent, then we can use the parent fields using parent and parent dot and the field name. And if it is the custom field, then we need to use underscore r dot field name instead of underscore c. So suppose on the contact, if I have a custom lookup of account for any requirement, and like we have a customer and we have its parent company or something also. So we have parent underscore c is the API name of the field, and I want to use I want to fetch the name of this parent from the using the SOQL. Then we can in our query we will use parent underscore r dot name, not parent underscore c. Instead of c, we will use underscore r dot name. And we have some aggregate methods also. Like if you want to count the records, we can count. If you want to find the minimum salary of from the contact record, we can find. If you want to find the maximum amount from the opportunity, we can use max. Same goes with the average and some also we can do using the aggregate queries. Next we have this is the typo. We have SOSL. So in the SOSL we have like it written the list of S object. So in the SOQL it was returning list of S object, but in the SOSL it written the list of S object. So here we have syntax find and search term. So majorly it is used for the searching purpose. So it is find, and we have search term in search group. Then what will be returning we have. So let's deep dive into the each one. So for the search term, it's any keyword to be searched. So like we want to find the Arpit, so we can use find, and this we can use Arpit, and we can use the conditional logic also here. So I want to find the Arpit also and decode SF also. So in that case, I can use or clause also here, or and also we can use, and we can find also. So and next we have search group. So search group is a thing. So which we need to from which fields we need to find the values. Like I need to find Arpit, but from which fields in which fields we need to check Arpit. So there are these are the supported fields like name, email and phone fields and all fields. So we talk about all fields, so all fields include all like name, email, and phone also. So suppose I want to find Arpit in all the fields, or I want to find Arpit or decode SF in all email fields only. So any email which contains the Arpit or decode SF should be returned. And apart from that, we can define the returning fields also. So we can define like returning contact, and with the contact I need to face like first name, last name, and email, and we can define the lead also. So with the lead I don't have any specific field. So then it will return me the IDs of that lead only. And as I talk about, like, it returns list of S object. So why it returns us list of S object? So if we have only the contact, then it will return us list of S object. And if we have defined multiple, then it will return us the multiple lists also. So, and how we will fetch like which list of which object? So in the which order we have defined, which we have given the object name here, it will return in the same order. So like for the first I have given the contact, so the list, if when I will fetch the list object, so on the 0 index I will get the first list of the contact, and the second list will be the lead. So that order is being followed. So whatever in the what order I write the returning fields here, so it will return the list in the same order. So when to use the SOSL? So like we want to retrieve the multiple objects and fields, then, and which are not related to each other, like we don't know the what are the relationship, like in the SOCL we know like it's the parent or child relationship they are having, but in the SOSL we don't know the relationship, then we can use the SOSL. And we know like the data, like for the we don't know like in the data in which field exists, so then also we can use SOSL. And another difference is that like SOQL can be used in the Apex and triggers both, but SOSL cannot be used in the triggers. And the limit of SOSL is that like it returns only the 2000 records only. It cannot return more than 2000 record in a single list. And SOQL returns around 50,000 records. Next, we have DML operations here. So DML is known as a data manipulation language. So we have these 6 major DML are here: insert, update, delete, and upset, merge, and undelete. So let's talk about one by one for each. So first we are talking about the insert. So like we can insert a single object also, and a collection of S objects also we can insert. And we have example like insert, we can insert the account, and we can insert the list of account. Similar to these statements, we have relative database class methods also. Database. So we have database.insert. So in the database.insert, like we can insert the record also and the list of records also. And we have one more parameter here, all or none. So it is used for the partial insertion. Like what happens, like what is the difference in this and in this? So like, so in this and this second one, so where suppose we are inserting two contacts, and in the first contact we have assigned the last name, but in the second contact somehow we didn't assign the last object, and we try to insert. So when we are using this statement, so both the record will not be inserted in the system. But when we are using this statement, and if we pass false, like it takes true or false only. So if we pass false here, so the first record will inserted and second record will not be inserted. And if you pass true, then only both the records will not be inserted. So if we pass true, then it will treat like this. And another thing also, like here it returns us the database.serve results. So the results also. So we can traverse on them and we can identify like which one was success and which one was failure. And for the DML options, like so we have some DML options also. So like when we can pass it to, like whenever like we have a text field and it has limitation like it only the 50 character can be assigned to it, but like we are getting we are getting more of the characters in that. In that case, like we will get some error. But if you want to bypass the error, then what we can do, we can truncate the data in the apex also, and else if you wanted to do automatically in the, then we have some option allow field truncation also there. So there is a separate class database.dml options that has some specific defined options, such as for the assignment rules also. Like with assignment rule, we need to fire whenever the lead or case is being inserted using the apex. So we can define it from there also. Similarly, we have update. So for the update, like if a record is already has ID, then we can update it. Like it is already in the system, then we can update it. So same goes, like we can update the single record also, and we can update the multiple records also. And similarly, we have database class method. So these works similarly like the insert one works. The partial update is available there. To update the record, like it must be having the ID. If we don't have the ID, then we will get, and if we try to update it, we will get some error. Okay. Next is delete. So same, like we can delete the single record, or we can delete the multiple records. And similarly, we have database.delete methods, database class method also. These methods take the record also, or record IDs also. So like we can pass the single record or list of records also, or we can pass the record ID, or we can pass the record IDs as well as, and we can do database.delete, and then we can delete the records. This is upsert. So we can in the upsert, like it will internally identify, like it can automatically insert the record or update the record. So on the basis of some ID, unique ID, it identify like the record will be inserted or it will be updated. Okay, so like we can upsert the single as object, or it's optionally we can give a field, and same goes with the list, and it's optional we can give a field also. So when we don't give any field, then it treat the record ID as a unique field. And if you want to give some external ID, then we can define this like this. So whenever it helps us when the data is coming from the external system, and we understand like the data can come the multiple times, then we can use external ID to identify it, like this record has been already inserted, and we can update it in that case. And we have the database.upsert method also. So it takes the record to upsert, and it takes a field, so which field to be treated as a unique field, and the boolean all or none is like partial action will be performed. So how this how it is being decided, like the record will be inserted or it will be updated. So if the key is not match, then the record will always be created. And if the key we have defined is matched with another records in the system, then the existing record will be updated. And if the key is matched with the multiple time, then the error is generated, and the the object will not, the record will not be inserted, or it not, nor it will be updated. Okay, so merge. So merge is like when we want to merge one object, one record into one or more record into one master record. So then we can merge the records. So here we have lots of methods and of the database class. Apart from the database class, we have the statements also, like merge as object and as object. So like this is the master object, which in which the other records will be merged. Here is the single as object and the multiple as object here. So in that case, there is a limit. Only the 3 records can be merged at a time in the single master record. I have an example, like in the system we have created 2 records. One is a decode SF certification, and in another I have append the additional S. Now when I was checking system, I found like these are the duplicate record. So this one I need to merge in this. So using using this statement like merge and master account. So this is my master account, and this is my merge account. So I can merge like this.
Anyone have used merge before? This is a very, very rare one. So just want to see if anyone having any experience on it.
Yeah, I have contact merging where we can pass IDs.
So did you notice any limitations around it, or any experience which you want to share here?
Yeah, so when you try to convert, merge account objects, you cannot, there are 2 types of accounts, person account and business accounts. So you cannot merge person account with a business account. So that's one limitation I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? So I've used this recently. Merge does not work for your custom objects. It works with some set of standard object like account, contact, lead, and then the one observation which we were completely surprised when we have used it is on the master record, which is in a survival record, right? And the slave which will get merged. So what we have seen is on a master record, it has changed the created date. So if your slave got an old created date, it will bring it to the master, and that had an issue in terms of reporting perspective. So very interesting that how this merge API works. If you have not tried it, I would definitely recommend you to try it on your developer box. It works very smoothly for things like if you have a lot of related records under your master and a slave, and all those will move very nicely to the master record. So try it. It is in a very good DML operations method available. Yeah.
Can I just add to that I've seen the similar type of situation, and that's why we ended up getting an Apex specific an App Exchange specific application to deal with the master slave area, because we had an end client who did not want to they wanted to merge, but they wanted to leave a record of what was there. So we couldn't, we had to source an App Exchange partner to do that for us, and which does emerge, but it does emerge in a way with what's left over as a slave. We could decide at a field level which one was leading. So this aspect, what your date, I think that would be quite dangerous in certain situations.
Yeah, no, true. Virgil, thanks for highlighting it. And based on your comment, I also remember one more important point to share here is when you merge it to a master, only the records gets merged. So if your slave got in a field which is not blank and your master got a field which is blank, it will not carry over all those fields to the master record. So merge is only a record to record merge, not your field to field merge.
That's very important as well. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So over to you, Arpit. Thank you.
Thanks, Manwan, for sharing your experience with this. So it's a really rarely used statement. So next we have undelete also. So sometime like we have deleted our records, and we all know like these records are stored in the recycle bin for next 15 days. So we can undelete these records also. So for that, like we have DML statement undelete, and we can give as object, or we can give ID also. Same as like we can give undelete or a subject list or IDs list also. And like how we will perform the undelete statement is like we can query the records from like we have deleted the decode FS certifications. So we need to open like all rows in the last for the SQL, and then we can use the undelete statement. So it will undelete the records. It will move from recycle bin to the actual our system.
So this all rows is only for undelete?
Hello, can you please come again?
Yeah, sorry. So this all rows keyword is only specific to undelete operation, or we can use it?
No, it will return you the only deleted rows.
And we can,
What?
yeah, sorry.
Now, all rows basically, so how it works in the database is, I assume that it is not the hard delete. When we delete it, it is in a soft delete, which Salesforce maintain a flag at a backend in the table, which would be, let's say, mark for deletion kind of thing, right? And then it goes to the recycle bin. So when we put in all rows, basically the query ignore that is deleted flag at a backend and refer to all the records. So it ignored the soft delete part of it.
Okay.
So that was all from my side. If anyone has any questions, then we can discuss on them.
Okay, so thank you very much, Arpit. Really appreciate, guys. Now you have your best opportunity to ask questions. I know we have not gone through lot of topic in depth, and the intention was also not to go through in the depth. As I said, we assume that you know the basic concept of Apex already, but if that understanding is not true, now you can ask questions, and we'll be very happy explaining any topic which is not clear to you, which we have covered today, or you want us to go in detail, we can do that now.
Exception handling will be a part of one of the next sessions, or is that not covered?
So some of the best practices, recommendations, exception handling, things like that, we'll definitely cover in the next session.
Cool.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make one point about flow, which is that it may be that in, let's say, in a month and a half, it will be out of date, the auto launch versus screen, because they have a new user interface on Flow. That's something which I just saw in this current release. So again, that's an issue with Salesforce sometimes, is that you're studying something and then like in a month's time it will be different. So that's one thing that came to mind when I was looking at what you were showing on the Flow Builder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think, Fergal, I have not gone through the release notes yet, but I think we can go through it, and we'll try to see if in one of our session, or maybe on other community channel, right? We can go through it and see that if we can take an advantage, someone presenting it, so we can try something like that.
Yeah, exactly, because Puneet, for example, was showing it last week.
Okay,
so
Saturday.
Exactly. So he showed that. So it's very relevant for now, but within Salesforce doing the exams, at a certain point, it may be in 6 months' time where the question may be slightly different, but that's only one very small part of Flow. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Okay. If there is no more questions, I would like to thank you, Arpit, for taking time and going through the session. Thank you very much, Arpit. We really appreciate your time. For the next session, it is in a continuation of the today's session. So all your questions where you see the story is not completed is because we are going to continue from here onwards for the process automation and talk about a little bit more in detail on the next session, which Prithvi will be covering from our side. This will be on the same time next week. So we have a lot to know, a lot to discuss on the next topic as well. Along with this, I would like to thank you, all of our motivators, supporters like you. We have already reached 1000 subscriber on the YouTube channel. So thank you very much for your love and support. And with that note, I would like to close today's session. Thanking Women in Tech members as well for their support on this session. So thank you everyone, and we'll see you the next week, same time. And till then, you have your rest of your weekend to enjoy. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Manmohan.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.